Warning.
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 Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey, it's me, Paul, from Personal Development Unplugged. And on this, hopefully slightly longer podcast, I want to ask you a question. And the question is, do you ask yourself questions? You see, I'm going to be talking about a thing called your surface of ignorance. I don't know what that is. Do you know what it is? We're going to find out, but not today. I want to explain about that, but it got me thinking, to understanding your surface of ignorance, you have to ask yourself questions. And if you think about it, and if you're, a regular listener to the episodes of Personal Development Unplugged, a lot of the time, we're asking ourselves personal questions. Now, for me, I love questions. And what we're going to talk about is, as I said, if you're a regular listener, you'll know that we ask questions. If you're new to this, you're going to be going, okay, this is new, and I'd like to listen to this thing about questions. So that's going to be new, or it's going to be like me and the people who listen a bit more regular, a kick up the bum. Because if you are like me, I love asking questions, but sometimes I've found out I just ask a question. Who are you asking the question to, Cluffy? Asking a question to me, my unconscious mind, to get some stimulation, some thoughts, some ideas, a direction, how to solve a problem, an issue. It's all to do with personal development, maybe a bit of therapy, all that stuff. But I ask myself questions, but I have found in the past that I just tend to ask the question. I'll even write it down, and we'll talk about writing it down later, and then I let it go. Now, letting it go is a good thing, and we'll talk about that. And we have talked about it as being, remember being validated by, I think that guy Josh Waitskin, asking unconscious mind, let it germinate, seed inside your unconscious mind, let it come out at the right time. But the thing is, letting it coming out at the right time is when you return to that subject, return to your unconscious mind and say, well, what's the answer? And I know a lot of the times I would just ask the question, think I've done the work then, and then carry on and forget to really, not to forget, I would just hope, and there's nothing wrong with hope, but it doesn't, there's more you can do, put it that way, than just hope the answer's going to appear like a miracle. Sometimes they do, but I think we can make that miracle work quicker, better, bigger, and things like that. So, come with me and think about this. You see, what is the thing about questioning? What does it do? Well, to me, I know the answers to a lot of things, but I don't always know them consciously. I can't remember them consciously, and that's a bloody problem. But I do know my unconscious mind can focus a lot better than I can consciously. And it can go and find out the answers. It can go through all different memories that I've consciously think I've forgotten. So it can go through my experiences of the past, the learnings from those experiences, and then come up with something else that I can consider. And sometimes I can consider it consciously and then ask again inside for clarification or something else, or I can just act. So that's what I want to talk to you today about. You see, questioning, everything I do with clients in my hypnotherapy side is all to do with questioning. In fact, I start off with, why are you here? Now, they might have told me that in an email, but what happens is when you ask somebody, why are you here? You get the surface answer, which is that affect that problem that they come to see you about. They want help to change. But the thing is below the surface, and you get a deeper or deeper set of information about that effect, because that's what we're talking about, the effects. The problems are the effects. It's caused somewhere else, and we want to deal with that cause. So to do that, we have to ask questions. So I ask, why are you here? And I'll repeat that quite a few times, and that will get me below the surface. I also ask them to find out what it will mean to them, that change. Because when we talk about just changing, oh, I just want to stop this, doing that, well, we're still concentrating on the problem. But when you start asking yourself, well, what will it mean to me when I change? What will it mean to me with my career when I've changed? What will it mean to me in my relationships when I change? My personal relationships, my social relationships. What will it mean to me inside? When you get all of those questions answered, if you really think about it, you then get motivation. And when we ask the unconscious mind, what its intention is, that positive intention for doing that, we get some real good, we get answers in that give us the information and show us conflicts. And it gives evidence that you and your unconscious mind, well, to me it doesn't when I'm working with a client, it gives the client evidence that they have an unconscious mind and they have the answers. It is not me doing things to them. It's actually them doing things with themselves. I'm just the guide and get them to ask themselves these questions. But you see, it's not just questions, is it? It's knowing about those questions. And you see, I wrote as my meta heading to this has got to be a routine. A routine. You've got to be honest about it. Because if you're not honest, you're not really looking, oh yes, I'm just going through this process. But if I'm not honest to listen to the answers, because some of the answers can be, a little bit, not hurtful, but it can make you a little bit sad, a bit guilty. They can bring up some negative emotions that, well, they're teaching you, but you have to be honest to listen to them so you can change them, which means you've got to be a little bit brave. So that's what I want you to do, because once you get this as a routine, an unconscious routine, things just happen because you've got over that honesty, you've got over that bravery because you just know it works. So I want to get you to be so enthusiastic about asking yourself questions because you know the answer is going to come. And it's that knowing the answers are going to come. You can just, I believe you can solve anything, but also you can attract anything. And not necessarily the law of attraction. I'm not talking about the woo-woo la-la stuff. If you believe that, then you know it works. If you don't, then there's different things. But what it means is you can attract the answers from inside as opposed to just blindly going around your business. And, it's going like working with, I don't know, it's just praying and spraying and just hoping things work. Hope is good. But hope with a direction is even better. And then having that direction with the resources you need is even awesomer, if there's such a word. So I want you to think about making this a ritual. I still do. I'm an options person. I love options. Sometimes I have too many options and I have to hone them down. But I've told this before, I'm sure, but if you're new to this, I used to be, in another life, I used to be in a small company with just me and another guy and about 100 guys working for us. So reasonably big, reasonably small company. We were really successful. But the thing is, just as we were successful, we had our problems. We had issues, because that's what happens. We were a growing company. We were pushing boundaries. We were having, I can't remember what the technical terms are, but we were having some pinch points and all that. I think that's a term they use and things like that. But we were having issues. And what I would do was I'd go away, sit in my office, and I'd come out with options. I didn't realize I was asking myself questions, but obviously was. I would go through, well, what ways can we do it? Well, we could solve it this way. and I'd ask myself some questions and I'd get some answers. Then I'd go, well, maybe there's another way. Is there another way? And I'd write on another piece of paper, option B, boom, boom, boom. Come up with different set of scenarios, different results, or different ways of doing things. And I'd go, well, maybe there's another way. And I'd get to 4 or 5 different options. And that's where sometimes it just gets too much and I had to rein it in. But then I'd go and see my colleague, a real good friend. We were friends as well as colleagues. We worked so closely together, and I'd go, hey, okay, Mike, we've got this problem. We're going to just sit down for the next half hour, and I'm sure we can find a way. So he said, well, obviously you've been thinking about it, Paul. What have you got? And I go, well, I've got option A, and then I've got option 2, because I like to A, 2, 3, B, all that stuff. But anyway, that's just me being silly. But I'd come up with this option. I'd go through it with him, and I said, well, but alternatively, we could do this, and that would result in this, and we could also do this. And I've also got another. Mike would go, Paul, you've got 5 bloody options there. Which one do you want? And I'd go, well, I'm not sure. Let's talk about it. No, you've gone through these options. Which one feels the right thing to do? And I said, well, it's a bit of A and a bit of B. Because we can mitigate the down in A with the pluses in B. And you go, well, let's do it then. And that was it, because he knew I'd gone through every bloody scenario that could possibly happen, and I'd come back through different ways of mitigating the downsides and the upsides, and when you put them all together, we had the answer. And he would then go, okay, I know everything, you've gone through it, let's make it work. And that's the time when I think back now, it was like deep diving, focusing, really just deep thinking, as it were. Is it Cal Newport, deep thinking? That's what I was doing back then, because I used to lock myself away with these different options to really think about it. And it just seemed to work. And I think I've just taken that on forever. Also, when I started learning NLP, which is slightly before that, we do a thing called meta-questioning, which is to take the generalities of everything and bring it down into specifics. So we've got this massive problem. Okay, where exactly does it affect our business? What is this problem? And we would then bring it down. How is this a problem? How do we know it's a problem? Where do we see the problem? Where do we feel the problem? What causes that problem? And we would hone down an issue. And I use meta-questioning with my clients. They come with this massive problem that's, I am depressed. Or I just have anxiety, Paul. And you go, you have anxiety everywhere? Well, not everywhere, Paul. Where specifically do you suffer, have most anxiety? Well, it's always when I'm at work. Well, what particular part of work gives you the most anxiety? Well, it's not because I'd say, well, when you're going to coffee or having a chat with your colleagues, well, no, I'm not anxious about that. It's really when I go to a meeting. So every meeting I get anxious about. Well, is it every meeting? Is it the ones that you call? Not so much. No, I have a little bit. Okay, I have a little bit. There's like an echo, a residue maybe. So where specifically do you have that anxiety? Well, it's when I have to go to a board meeting and I have to present. So the whole of that meeting, I'm really anxious about that particular part of my presentation to get it to get the facts across. Okay, so we've honed down this whole bit of anxiety down to getting facts across, and we can work with that. But that client of mine was overwhelmed with anxiety. And what happens is, when we take this, what happens in life, I guess, we get the specifics and we generalize them into everything. So like this meta-questioning would bring it down and down and down into specifics. And the therapist who did this, she was absolutely awesome at doing the work. She just didn't know how she did it. She was modelled, and they found the meta model, and use it every time. But the thing is, don't just use it for therapy. You use it all the time, because they're just questions, because you want to get to specifics, and also maybe going back into the bigger picture. So how does it affect the bigger picture? And what happens if we did this? There's lots of things, but I think there's some golden rules I'd like to talk about, because we can think of questions. You and I, we can wander along in our little world and go, oh, that issue, I'll think about that for a little while. And I'll ask myself, I'll do what Cluffy says, I'll ask myself a question. And because I do this as well, because I'm Cluffy. And I'll walk along and I'm thinking of these questions. And that's maybe an answer there. Oh, yeah. And then something else comes into my mind, or something interrupts my pattern. Something there could be a noise, or something happens, and my train of thought. We've all had it. We've had what's called a pattern interrupt. We use it in hypnosis, but you have a pattern interrupt, and your mind, as if it goes blank. And you must have had those times when you're talking about something, and someone says something completely what you think is irrelevant about something completely different, and they go, oh, sorry about that. Carry on, and you go, I can't remember what I was saying. And for the life of you cannot remember what you're saying, what you were talking about. That pattern interrupt just suddenly gets that amnesia going. You might get it back later on, but it's too bloody late then, isn't it? But the thing is, just thinking it is good, but the golden rule, and this is my golden rule, and I think it's a golden rule. Therefore, yeah, because it's my golden rule, I do think it's a golden rule. I'd like it if you could become your golden rule. Write the bloody thing down. Write all of these things down. Write the questions and everything. I'll go through it with you. See, if you write it down, you can always come back to the question. You can come back to the answers you've got. You can actually come back to maybe that blank piece of paper with just a couple of questions on it. And then as you think about it, you get your unconscious mind to give you the answers again, because you've sent the unconscious mind away. As we've said, that's the stuff we do. Josh Waitskin, give the unconscious mind a question, leave it to germinate, leave it to come back to the answer, but bring it back to give you the answer. And that's when you write it down, you can actually then go, I'm here now to think about the answers. And we'll talk about that's just setting your intention, isn't it? But so if you write it down, you can always revisit it. That's the whole point. You can also come back to it and go, well, I've got all the answers, but at least now I'm going to start taking some action. Because that's the whole point, isn't it? What's the point of having all these questions, sorting out issues, if you're not going to take action on the things you've done deep work on? Because, think about those 5 keys to success that we use, okay? We know our outcome, yeah? And that's even a question. We're going to talk about that. Now, what's my outcome? If you don't know where you're going, the target, we go everywhere but the bloody direction we want to go. I know I've had it, where I do things and I think I'm in the right direction, but I've forgotten that really isn't my outcome I'm looking for. That wasn't the issue. I've just got on something that was maybe a bit easier. So the 5 keys to success, as I said, know your outcome. Take massive and intuitive action. And when I say massive action, sometimes it could be a great leap, but also it could be with full enthusiastic motivation on that baby step. That's massive action to me, putting everything into that baby step with focusing on that outcome. Then being aware of the progress you're making, measuring it. Are you in the same right direction? Are you still heading for that outcome? Is what you're doing, important? Is it part of the problem, or is it just something like a side shoot, and you can deal with it later? But let's park it for the moment. And having that flexibility to do exactly that, either park it and change what you're doing. Because if you keep doing what you're doing and you're not getting the result, why keep doing what you're doing? Do something different and notice the result. And obviously the last ones, which is act from a psychology and physiology of excellence. Act as if. But anyway, we've talked about that so many times. And I'll keep adding it because it just works. But if you're going to write it down, write it down. Write it down. I love these massive journals. I also like to take, following that Cal Newport deep work, make time to sit down or stand or wherever you do with that journal. Take time out, set aside. This is my time. It may only be 10 minutes, but you're going to turn off your phone. You're going to close the door, turn off anything that's likely to interrupt you for 10 minutes so you can really do the work, which is setting your intention then, isn't it? You know, you're not only setting your intention just to do deep work, but then we're actually going to set your intention for what you want to achieve. That's another, it's like your outcome about the deep work, not the outcome for the problem, because that's going to come in a minute. But this is my outcome. I'm now going to think about this. May have to get into state, a thinking state, a quiet state, a focus state, whatever it is. How do we do that? It's all about anchoring. And if you go to the paulcloughonline.com/podcast, hypnosis tracks are all about setting your state and setting your intention. They're all there. They're free. Anyway, go there, have a look. They're awesome because I did them. And I'm very modest about that. But no, they just work. So we're going to, let's just recap a little bit. We're going to write these things down. And to do that, we're going to set aside some time to do some deep work. We're going to set our intention, set our state. And what we have to do is clearly define the issue. Because if we don't understand what the problem is, how can we then work with it? This sounds so bloody obvious, Paul, and it is a flash of the bleeding obvious. But the thing is, this is what we don't normally do. We don't do the obvious. You know, common sense is not that common. I don't know why that's called that, but it isn't that common. We're going to use it. So we're going to state the issue and define what the issue is to make sure that we, again, hone down till we know just the issue. Because what you have to think is the issue is an effect. So let's state it. What this issue, what is it affecting? Because we know we generalize things. And we talk about effects as being the problems. Well, obviously, effects are a problem, but we have to deal with them at its cause or at their cause. And when we deal with the cause, the effects cannot happen. So we're going to state the issue and also state the result we want, the outcome. Because if we don't know where we're going, how are you going to know which way to go or even what questions to ask? So we need to state the issue, we need to state the outcome and make sure we're happy with those. Take time. That I think is sometimes the most important thing to do, because once you've done that with clarity, with focus, with specificity, I love that word, specificity, you're now going to get the answers that you want. The more specific the question or the problem, the more specific the answers you're going to get, and the results will be out of this world. We don't want just a general answer. Oh, that's watered down. We want something that's specific. I can't even say it. Specific. That's going to get the answers you want and the results that you want. So knowing that the problem is only an effect, we can ask our very first question. Then after that, obviously we've asked questions like, "What is this issue?" You have to ask yourself that question. And what is the result I want? As I said, everything in my life anyway seems to be questions. So then I'll ask, well, what is the cause? What is the possible cause? What are the possible causes? Let's throw those down. Maybe just ask inside, I wonder what the cause of this is. What is the one thing? And here's another question. What's the one thing that when changed would have the most effect on this problem? What is the one thing that's creating all these effects? Now, you may not get that straight away, because sometimes if you did that straight away, then you know what the answers are. But we have to work to that cause. We have to, again, specify our questions to focus and focus and focus, so we find that one tiny bit, the one thing that when changed blows everything out of the water and gets the results we want. And that's how I work with clients, because generally it's just one or two things, a feeling and a belief, that when that feeling disappears and that limiting belief disappears, all those other behaviors they can't exist anymore. and everything has to change in the right way. Then we can go and find the resources we need to change. But first of all, find the root cause. You just like that there's a gardening metaphor in every blooming thing we can think of, isn't there? Having a weed, you can pull the leaves out. The effects. What happens? No, the root is still there, and it will grow more leaves. So if you haven't got a problem there, and we stop that problem, a problem comes elsewhere. But if you take the root out, the root of the problem, the root cause, all the effects have to disappear. So you've got questions around that. Then you have to say, well, what other questions could I ask? And this is where I've got a bucket full. But what I would suggest is have a little one of these. I'm waving it, but it's just a little piece of paper with a set of questions. What I would do, and a lot of these are in my head now, and they come out pretty naturally because I've had the routine. I've been honest, knowing that I don't know the answer straight away. I'm being honest that sometimes I am not at fault, because I don't believe in fault, but I'm creating this problem. I'm responsible for this problem. How can you be responsible for a problem, Paul? Well, if it's affecting you, you're part of the problem. Therefore, you're creating it. And if you believe in, total responsibility, cause and effect, well, once you take responsibility, you become the cause of the solution. That's what I believe. So if I'm responsible for the solution, I'm also responsible for the problem. So what I want to do is get lots of questions. Now, I would write them down on a card. Maybe another book. Open it up so you've got all these different questions. So some may be personal, some may be business, career orientated, relationship orientated, but sometimes they'll merge, because they'll still have even a question which doesn't seem to be directed at that type of problem could be the one question that opens everything up for you. So just have a list of good questions. And I also think the questions ought to be simple. We talk about old Albert Einstein. In simplicity, there's genius. And that rings so true when it comes down to questioning. Tim Ferriss. I've talked about Tim Ferriss before. He's entrepreneur. He's done loads of business stuff. He now has one of the most successful podcasts, deconstructing what really good people do. And I use a lot of that to deconstruct what he's talking about, so we can get some real skills in being able to do that. But the thing is, he does so much good work in the world now. And one of his questions he asks of himself is, and I know that he does something very similar by sitting down, putting time aside to deep work with a paper and a pencil, or a book and a pencil, and he asks, if this was easy, what would it look like? Well, he's a visual person, but if you're not a visual person, what would it be like? If this was easy, what it would be like? If this was easy, what would it feel like? Hear like? See like? What would it look like? Doesn't really matter which way you ask that question, but if this was easy, what would I do? Maybe that's an easier one. So make them, and you can do, when you ask all these questions, you can, and I do suggest you do, you go with what you think first. So brainstorm, if that's a thing, the right term, but just write the question out. If this was easy, what would it be like? I love that. What would it be like? That gives you every option. And you just let your mind go. And then you say to your unconscious mind, okay, well, I'm going to leave it with you, and I'm going to come back to this question again in a day's time, in an hour's time. At least you're giving it direction. And then when you come back in that after that time period, I know, well, what else would this look like or be like if it was easy? And I know you get even better answers. So I suggest you do that with every question. But that was a great one. But think about I've got loads here. Actually, if it's a personal problem, and it's maybe an emotion or things that you're doing which you don't particularly like, you can just ask your unconscious mind, what's the intention? What's your intention, your positive intention for having me feel this way, to act this way, to believe this way? Because sometimes when you know what your unconscious mind is trying to do for you, you can get it, and you can consciously get it to understand the conflict. We want what your unconscious mind is trying to do for you. We just don't want the behaviour that it's using at the moment, because it's no longer working, because you feel that way. You believe that way. You might want to ask a question, because you know how you feel, how you're behaving, what you're believing. You might want to ask the question and write it down. How do I want to feel? Because sometimes when we're so focused on the problem, we can't think of, or we don't think of, if the problem was gone, how would I feel? How do I want to feel? So how do I want to feel? How do I want to be? How would I just like to be in the world, and how would that make me feel? All these different variations on a question. We talked about 2 brilliant questions. And they were, what am I doing that if I stop doing would allow this issue to begin to disappear? Or if it's a problem, if it's a career problem or a work problem or a project problem, what are we doing that if we stop doing would allow this project to be successful or to move on? Then obviously you've got the reverse of that. What am I not doing that if I started doing would allow me to be different, or this project to move on, or the conclusion of this project to be so successful? Now, you can think about that consciously, and I suggest all of these questions should be worked on with deep work, consciously thinking of the questions and thinking of the answers, and then give it to your unconscious mind for a period of time, and then come back and revisit it. See if you find more information. Now, I've got more questions I've written down. I've got how do you want to feel, as we've said. One of the questions I like to ask is, what's important to me about this issue? Or about the solution to this issue, or getting the solution to this issue? Because if it isn't really important to you, then drop it. Because it probably doesn't, maybe I'm just getting wrapped up in something that really isn't that important. I tend to think sometimes, am I making a drama of this? Is anybody going to die if we don't solve this right away? Well, actually, no. Then you might say, well, what's important to me about this, and why is that important? Find the value, the motivation. Why is this important to me? Because then you have the motivation to begin to change. Who do I want to share this experience with, or the solution with, or the success with? Who don't I want to share the solution with, the success with? Because I think that they're important things that you can, again, focus down who you want to be there with. Another couple of good questions. What will I gain? What will I gain when the solution comes? And what will I lose? Now, sometimes on a personal level, when you do this work, you might say, well, I'll lose my anxiety. And that will be awesome. I'll lose my depression. What will I gain won't necessarily be confidence if it's anxiety, but I'll gain freedom to do what I want. And you suddenly go, whoa, why is that? Then you can go to that question, why is that important? Why is that freedom important to me? And then you start going, whoa, I've got so much motivation. Now I'm really going to find the answers, because I want to find those answers, because it's going to make that difference for me. You might even ask the question, what's the worst that could happen? And then after that, but really? Because I like that. Because sometimes go, oh, it's going to be really? What is the real worst that could happen? And following that by a quick question of, and how can I mitigate that? How can I mitigate that? Awesome questions. I mean, if it's on business things or a problem that you're not sure of the answer at all, I can write these down, but I just don't know the answers. You might want to ask, who do I know has experience of this type of issue? Or more importantly, who do I know who's had the experience of finding a solution to this type of problem? Who does this type of thing? Who succeeds in this type of thing? Who has the skill or the knowledge? Everything is a question. It's how you use those questions. And this is where that was my honesty. And being brave to admit to you that, yeah, I know all of this stuff. I don't always use it. When I do use it, though, and this is a real stupid moment, when I do use these skills, when I do use these type of questions in the format that I've just said, using that deep work, setting my intention, setting my state, giving myself the right time to be specific about the questions, the cause, the problem, and my outcome, I know I find the answer. And the thing is, the answer doesn't always come in just, oh, there's the answer, Paul. It's like a voice. Oh, Paul, what a wonderful question, Cluffy. Here's the answer. But as I work through this, it's like the solution evolves inside me. So I don't really know the answers one by one, but then I get a knowing of this is the thing to do. And then I can just make sure that I'm fully protected in any way, shape or form. And when you do that, it's awesome. So, I don't know what you take from all of this. That's another question. But I think it's something that will change the way you get your results. In a very positive way, obviously. It cannot not be the solution, I think. Because you become responsible. You become responsible for your solution. You become at cause. And when you're at cause, you're empowered. And then the results empower you even more to go even deeper, bigger, better. Hey, this is a bit of my passion, I think, about questioning and things like that. And it wasn't until I started writing down a few notes about this, I found that everything I do is a question. But the important thing is getting the answer to those questions. You can have you can listen to this and go, yeah, intellectually it makes all sense, Paul. Yeah, there's some good questions there, but unless you actually do the work, this thing called mastery. Remember, doing what you know and knowing what you do. So you don't have to know everything about it. Even if you just picked 2 or 3 good questions, you'd get a better answer. And then you'd expand. You can even ask yourself, what would be the best question I could ask to get the best result? What's that one question that, when answered, would allow this result to be the most perfect result that I want for this problem? They're awesome questions. Anyway, I have one question for you. Well, a couple probably now to finish off. It got a lot longer than I thought it would. But here's the question. Have you shared this, or the PDU, Personal Development Unplugged podcast? Have you shared them to 5 people? If you haven't, please do. It's a lovely way of paying it forward and creating this community of sharing and creating a better world. You imagine sharing the way to ask wonderful questions. It's another way of communicating. How can I communicate better? How can I help you? More bloody questions. And we've got some answers here. The other thing is, and it's like a personal question to you, have you put a review up? I know you haven't. Well, some of you have, some of you haven't. Have you put a review up on iTunes or your Castbox or the platform of choice? iTunes would be the best for me if you could. Just go there. It takes about 2 minutes. Click on the listen through Apple Podcasts, I think, and then it's got reviews. Just click on reviews, put a review in. I think I've put a box now on my on the website, personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. Right hand side, big picture of me. I think you click on that, it takes you to iTunes, click on the next bit, and you can leave a review. And you can subscribe. There you go. If you could do all of that, it would probably take you 5 minutes. And the question would be, how would that make me feel? Well, that I can tell you the answer to that one. It would make me feel absolutely bloody awesome. It would give me so much more motivation, enthusiasm to just keep banging this stuff out. I know I'd then find even more things to talk about. How would it make you feel? I don't know that, but I think you do. Anyway, that's it from me from this longer podcast from Personal Development Unplugged. Paul Cluffy, wishing you everything you desire and get it quicker, bigger, and even something even better than this. Okay? Enjoy every heartbeat. See you later. Bye-bye.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.